Today we're going to talk about something that quite honestly I have built my entire hunting approach on, and that is when you can go ahead and find and set up high odds, low impact stands, that changes the world. What do we mean by high odds, low impact? Guess what? You're about to find out, and we're about to teach you how you can go ahead and manufacture these locations if you don't already have them naturally. We talk a ton about creating high odds, low impact setups. To be most effective, you have to match your improvements to the habitat. Western habitat, heck of a lot different than Midwestern habitat. He's not putting all that energy into building up his antlers until his body's taken care of. The overwhelming majority of the tips that I come up with are issues I'm running into while I'm out here working. We talk a ton about creating high odds, low impact setups. As a matter of fact, especially as it applies to the small landowner, that frankly is mission critical. The reason I'm standing out here in this hot sun today is I actually happen to be a grand total of, maybe 60 yards from the new deer and deer hunting office. We are just outside the city limits, and we happen to, along with the office space we're renting, have access to 5 acres of ground here. Guess what? We're going to create a fairly high odds, low impact stand site right here. Now, all we're going to do is we're going to come in here, we're going to bush hog that area there, we're going to plant some food. Then what will that result in? That will result in Dan, David, any one of our staff being able to get done from work, walking out, slap on their hunting stuff, walk out that door, and jump into a soft-sided redneck that we're going to place right underneath between those 2 trees right there. That way, any wind that happens to be blowing this way whatsoever, we're standing in the middle of the yard, deer are not going to go to that yard, but guess what? Happens to be an egg field over there. So they are going to want to go over to that egg field and feed in the afternoon, evenings, and then in the morning, filter back to where they're bedding. There lies the whole trick to this stuff. Okay, what do I have to work with? In this case, what I have to work with is I've got 5 acres. I've got 5 acres, I've got a lawn here. Okay, so now how can we access that without blowing it up? If we go back into that timber at all, we have exploded that timber, guaranteed. Our hunt is done. But if we just go ahead and put in a little trophy clover plot right over there, put in a ghillie blind right there, now we can go like this all day, every day. As long as the wind is blowing in that direction, we are never going to get winded. That is how we create high odds, low impact stands. We go ahead, we look at our property, we study it. Okay, what areas can we safely access? What areas have a dead zone for our wind to blow into and we can get out of? Okay, now we take those spots, and the best amongst them, we build around them. It doesn't matter if it's a slam dunk spot or if it's some spot like this. This is the best we got. Are we going to kill Pope and Young after Pope and Young after Pope and Young out of that blind there when we're done? No, but it is the best we got. And we just manufactured relatively high odds, exceptionally low impact hunting. And this right here is how we did it. Our most powerful weapon is our brain and our powers of analytical thought. Utilize the heck out of it. We are remodeling these whitetails worlds. If we're going to do that, you darn right, we might as well do it so it benefits us as much as the whitetails. We talk and talk and talk about high odds, low impact stand setups. Mission critical for small properties, particularly. Beneficial for all properties, but mission critical for the small ones. How do you pull that off? You pull it off by first identifying the areas you can access, depart, and hunt without getting busted. Okay, then you take the best of those, you build around them, and you take what you have and you make it the best you can. That does not necessarily mean the best ground around, but you know what? Sure is going to be nice that after we're done with work, all they got to do is get up, grab their bow, get dressed, and come right there, 100 yards from their desk, and be hunting. Grown Big TV is brought to you by 10-Point Crossbow Technologies. There is no substitute. Redneck Blinds, the best hunting blinds on the planet. Furminator, the best food plot implement on earth. Hunter Safety Systems, saving lives is what we do. And by Antler King, bigger bucks, healthier deer. This segment of Grown Big TV is brought to you by 10-Point Crossbow Technologies. There is no substitute. As serious hunters and managers, we now understand exactly the benefits we can get from high odds, low impact stands. But let's not stop there. Let's go ahead and apply that to cameras as well. We take odor control so darn seriously when it comes to hunting. We take access, our wind direction for our stand, departure, all that stuff, low impact, minimize our disturbances, minimize them. And then we go ahead and grab the trail camera that we have had stored all darn summer long in our garage, in our closet, thrown on a table in some corner, sitting in a box somewhere in the house, and we throw it out by our tree stand. How many of you would go grab a stinky shirt that you've wore around the house for a couple days and throw that by your tree stand? Virtually none of us. Okay, but yet we don't think twice about doing that with our camera equipment. Low impact camera usage starts with storage. If you're going to put stinky things out in the woods, guess what? Deer are generally going to try to avoid them. So you start with storage. Then ask yourself, where are my high odds places to set cameras? Okay, get a whole list of high odds locations and now ask, which are the lowest impacts of these locations that will go ahead and give me the data I want. What do I mean by low impact? Low impact, all it really means is I can get to that location, swap that chip, and get out of there without any deer hearing me, seeing me, or smelling me. As long as that's the case, I wasn't even there. Perception is reality in the whitetail world. So you pick the spots where you can get to, slap up your cams, check them, and get out without disturbing the whitetails. You use cameras that don't smell. Now, if they're loud or noisy cameras, go ahead and set them way up. Put them 8, 9, 10 feet up and angle them down. That'll help you a ton. Set them to single shot burst. If you're having issues with spooking deer, if you're using top quality products, cameras that aren't making noise and such, no problem. You can go ahead and set them right essentially at eye level to whitetails, right in their face, and they'll be fine with them as long as they don't smell. So use clean cams, time your trips for midday as much as possible, or in higher impact locations, go ahead and try to time them with bad weather. You know, those really windy, rainy days, you can get away with a lot of stuff out there. Just go out, set your cameras, leave them for a week to 2 weeks, come back in another crappy weather day and go yank the things. You just got your intel. But it all starts with, generally speaking, clean cameras, low impact locations, time your trips for when the deer were least likely out there, and cut your odors. You do those things and your cameras will produce far better for you than if you're spooking deer with them. Trail cameras are awesome tools, but remember, they can spook deer as well. So can we when we're out there running them. So treat them for odors. Make sure they don't smell when you put them out there. Treat yourself for odors. Time your trips for the times when deer are least active, and put your cams in high odds, low impact locations. When you go for the high impact locations, time it with the weather. Make it so the crappy weather is covering your disturbances. You do that, cameras are going to work a lot better for you. Grown Big TV is brought to you by Chestnut Hill Outdoors, Reconyx, see what you've been missing, and by Wildlife Research Center, the gold standard. So we've covered high odds, low impact stands and campsites. That's all great, but remember, we need to be able to get in and out of those stands. That is every bit as important, and we're about to cover how. Manufacturing high odds, low impact stands is the major name of the game when it comes to what we're doing out here, managing our habitat for deer hunting. Now, afternoon, evening sits are relatively easy to come up with that low impact because we've got a pretty darn good idea where the deer are going to be when we're heading in the stand. If we're doing it right, they're going to be back in their bedding areas. Okay, that means we can walk through those food sources. Now that deer aren't using their transition zones that much yet at that time of day when we're slipping in the afternoons. Okay, and we can generally slip out through the timber because by the time it's dark, we're hoping that the majority of the deer have passed us and they're out on the food sources now. Mornings are tough. Mornings are very difficult by comparison. And manufacturing those low impact, high odds AM stands, that needs to be done right up front. That needs to be factored into your overall plan because they're not going to happen by accident. So really study your property. Look at those areas where, I've got that bedding site that's pretty darn close to the road. All I've got to do is jump off the road, pop up into the woods 100 yards, and man, I'm hunting just like I'm hunting in the very middle of our property. Now, look for those types of setups where you can slip in off the road, through the timber 100 yards, and you're up in the tree. And you happen to have yourself an AM place where you can set up an ambush for a very, very high odds sit. Especially during the rut, those doe bedding areas that are set up like that are awesome. Many times you can't get bucks to bed where you want them to. Oftentimes you have much more flexibility when it comes to does. They're more interested in convenience than they are safety. They're not going to ignore safety concerns, but we're keeping our ground safe. So we can go ahead, we can move that doe bedding area closer to a low impact access and departure route. Really, really study your properties. Try to find those low impact morning setups. What you really need to do is you need to put in thought. You need to study your ground before you start making improvements. When you're making that initial plan, how can I manufacture low impact, high odds AM sits? Where are the locations that I can go ahead and make it so they're bedding in an area where I can slip in easy, or they're transitioning through an area that I can slip in easy? A prime example of this, one of the best low impact AM setups you can make are those pinch points between the crops and that nasty erosion cut that goes down the side of that high ground. When that erosion cut is so steep that those deer can't naturally cross it, you know what? They're going to either have to cross down at the bottom of that erosion cut, or they're going to wrap the top between the tip of that erosion cut and the edge of the field that they don't want to walk out into. I just got done describing, to start with, the AM doe bedding area situations. Look at your access and look at, okay, how can I go ahead and make a doe bedding area in an area that I can slip up nice and easy for peak rut. So I'm hunting just like I'm hunting in the middle of the property, but I'm barely in there. The more you study that ground, look for those areas where, I've got a major food source here. I'm not going to stop them from going to this major food source no matter what I do. It's this great big soybean, corn, and alfalfa series of fields. But is there a way I can backdoor into there in the morning and then go ahead and create a nice little kill plot so that I can backdoor in and get out without them ever knowing you're there? AMs are by far the most challenging low impact, high odds stand setups we can have. The more work we put into it, the more thought we put into it up front, we can manufacture those high odds, low impact AM setups. And we do that, we're effectively hunting our property without the deer knowing we're even there. again with my good friend and dear nutritional pagan god, Todd Stittelberg. You notice I said pagan just so I wouldn't be sacrilegious there.
That's right.
All right, there's so much chat, there's so much talk about what it takes to grow healthy deer. Let's get into that a little bit today, Todd, because frankly, no one I know has dedicated anywhere near as much of their life specifically to answer those questions. What does it take to grow the healthiest deer in the world?
You know, protein's very important, energy's very important, and vitamins and minerals. You know, those really are the bases that you need to cover.
Well, can I interrupt you for a second here?
Mm-hmm.
Not only do you have to supply those things, you have to supply them in highly digestible forms as well.
Good point. Yes.
Because as a nutritionist told me many, many years ago, pointed at his shoe and said, what if my shoe's 25% protein? What good does that do a deer to eat it? Well, they ate it, they ate 25%, but how much of that are they actually going to digest and
Correct.
absorb?
If it's not digestible, it's not doing them any good.
Exactly.
Exactly, you know, so.
And while we're on that, real quick, why is it that cows and sheep essentially can digest that shoe and deer can't?
They're all ruminants, first of all.
Yep.
But some are able.
Four-chambered stomachs.
Correct. But some are able to digest certain fibers better than others.
And isn't that keyed to essentially the size of their first chamber, their stomach? They can hold much more. It's disproportionately larger than a whitetail, so they can hold a lot more in, allowing their microbes to work on it for a much longer period of time.
Yes.
So just because your cows are eating this stuff and getting something good of it, it sure don't mean your deer are going to.
Not 100%, no.
Okay.
No.
So we need all those things in highly digestible forms. Obviously, everybody's talking about genetics out there. Genetics plays a huge role. Age plays a big role as well. What about stress? Because nobody talks about stress.
That is a great point, because when you start, you know, when those bucks start fighting, I mean, it is amazing the amount of stress that they are under. I mean, imagine taking a rack from a 3 or 4 year old buck and start hitting on it with a hammer. You're going to have to strike it an awful lot of times before you break it. How many bucks have you seen with broken off tines, broken off main beams, a gouged out eye?
Those 4 or 5 year old bucks with those soda can, snapped off about this far up the base.
Yeah. I mean,
the amount of force that takes.
I can't imagine the stress that they're under when they're fighting X amount of times throughout the fall. It's got to be just mind-boggling.
And that is obviously going to impact their overall health, their antler development, all that stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what can a person do to help minimize? I mean, obviously, we need to supply them. To grow the healthiest, biggest deer around, you need to supply them with the appropriate nutrition. It needs to be highly digestible. They also need time. They need to have if they're not going to exceed their genetic cap. Okay, period, end of story. Whatever their genetic cap is, that's as high as they're going to go. What you're really hoping is that you can meet their genetic cap. Okay, and then we need to minimize stress. We can do that simply with how we lay out our food plots to a great extent, can't we?
Minimizing stress, I would say yes, you probably could.
Rather than have that one centralized food source where all makes it great for hunting. Where are the deer going to be feeding?
Yep.
They're going to be feeding here tonight. But generally speaking, you're not going to be able to hold the number of deer on that ground, and the amount of stress they're going to be under is going to be considerably more than if you take that 4-acre food plot and divide it into 4 1-acre food plots. Because now they each have their own little corner that they can dominate.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, because, you know, if you are having, let's say, one central food source, one large food plot, and you're basically going to have all of the deer piling into that, you certainly are going to create much more stress. You're going to have a lot more buck fights.
Your family groups are going to be, if the food availability is limited at all, your family groups are going to be competing massively over it. And the more we can go ahead and address all these issues, the more we can tie them together, we can minimize the stress, maximize the nutrition, make it so that they get to whatever age that our goal is. And if the neighbors on the other side of the fence shoot them, you know what? They deserve nothing but congratulations, because they have every right to do that, just like we have every right to pass them. And we have every right to break those food plots up.
Yep.
Because now not only are we minimizing the social stress of all those animals competing over that one resource, but now that buck, odds aren't half bad he's going to check all 4 of those, is it?
Probably will.
Yep. And you start tying all that together, and we can grow ourselves some healthy deer, my friend. Thank you for watching Growing Big TV. If you want more information, we've got the social media covered, we've got the magazine covered, we got the TV and thing covered. We are a wealth of information, and we're here to help you become better hunters and managers. Thanks again for watching Growing Big TV. Go forth and conquer, my friends.